The gate groaned like a dying steer when Elias Boone shoved it open. Rusted hinges screamed against the silence, and the dry wind pushed dust across his boots in restless swirls. The land stretched bare, fences broken, boards sagging, the ranch house leaning like a drunk against the horizon. Every corner of the place looked abandoned, yet it watched him with a stillness too sharp to ignore. He set down his sack, wiping sweat from his brow, and the sun pressed on him like iron. The porch creaked when he stepped onto it. A nail popped loose, the sound small but sharp enough to prickle the back of his neck. He pushed the door open, and the smell of dust and wood rot spilled out, thick and stale. Inside, shadows clung to every corner. A broken chair lay on its side, cobwebs draped across the beams like funeral cloth. He stood still, listening. Nothing. No bird. No fly. Just the hollow breath of the house itself. His eyes caught the well out back through a cracked window. It rose out of the ground like a gravestone. The boards around it split and sun-bleached. The thought of water pulled him. His throat burned, and his skin itched for a drink. Elias crossed the yard, boots crunching gravel, every step stirring memories of stories whispered in town. Men who went missing, cattle that wandered too close. He ignored them, steadying his breath. His calloused hands gripped the rope, lowering the bucket. The pulley squealed, rope fibers burning as they unwound into the dark. He leaned, squinting. The bucket struck something hard. A sharp, metallic clang rose up from the depths. Elias froze. That wasn't stone. The sound lingered, echoing against the hollow walls of the well. He listened, ears straining. For a moment, it seemed as though something knocked back. He yanked the bucket up, fast, heart-hammering. Water? None. Only a thin trace of damp earth at the bottom. He stood staring into the black circle, sweat dripping into his eyes. The desert wind hissed behind him, carrying the faint creak of the ranch houseboard shifting. Elias stepped back. The well stood silent, but it felt alive, watching. He rubbed his hands on his trousers, throat dry as bone. The sun dipped lower, laying long shadows over the yard, stretching fingers across the well's rim. Somewhere out on the ridge, a coyote yipped once, then stopped short, as though it too knew better than to linger. Elias adjusted the brim of his hat and turned toward the house, leaving the well behind. But the sound of that clang followed him, rattling in his chest like an unanswered question. Behind him, the wind whistled down into the darkness, carrying a whisper no man could quite make out. The floorboards rattled under his bed in the night. Elias shot awake, breath sharp, hand instinctively reaching for the old rifle leaned against the wall. The room was still, but the sound lingered, slow, measured footsteps across the porch, boards creaking one after another. He held his breath. The steps stopped at the door. Silence stretched. Only the low groan of the wind pressed against the shutters. Then nothing. When he finally rose, the lantern flame wavered against cracked walls, casting long, twisted shadows. He opened the door. Empty porch, dust swirling in the moonlight. No prints in the dirt. No rider. No boots. Only the sound of coyotes far off, keeping their distance. The next morning, he worked the corral, mending fence posts with hands that remembered soldiers' labor. Sweat cut lines through the dust on his face, hammers striking wood. When he felt eyes on him, across the ridge, 3 riders sat still as stone. Wide hats, rifles slung. They didn't move, only watched. The sun glared off their buckles, and after a moment, they turned their horses and disappeared into the canyon. That night, he dreamed of the war again. The crack of rifles in Virginia fog, men falling beside him, the cold precision in his hand when he fired without thinking. He woke with the taste of iron in his mouth, heart pounding. His wife's voice, long buried, seemed to whisper through the rafters, gone before he could hold it. The third day, a sound drew him to the barn. Wind pushed the doors open, hinges crying. Inside, dust floated thick in the shafts of light. He stepped across the floor, boots scuffing straw, and his toes struck metal. Bending, he dragged it free, a revolver, old but well-kept, its handle worn smooth by use. The barrel carried the faint initials scratched by hand. J.M. Elias turned it over, thumb brushing the engraving, a strange unease curling in his gut. This wasn't a ranch hand's weapon. The barn felt tighter now, darker. He holstered it anyway, the weight familiar on his hip, as though it had been waiting. That evening, he stood over the well again. Lantern light trembled in his hand, lowered into the throat of stone. The flame reflected back, glinting off something wedged deep between the rocks. Not water, metal. A box, cornered tight in the shadows. His breath caught. He leaned further, rope groaning in his hands, eyes straining. The box gleamed again when the lantern swung. Then the rope slipped. The lantern clanged against the side, glass shattering, and the well swallowed the flame. Darkness surged upward like smoke, thick and heavy. Elias staggered back, chest tight, the night pressing close. Somewhere in that black throat below, something waited, patient as a grave. Rope bit into Elias's palms as he lowered himself into the throat of the well. Stone scraped his boots, damp air pressing close, the sound of his breath echoing back at him like another man climbing behind. He didn't look down, only at the faint gleam wedged in the wall below. The lantern he tied above swung gently, its faint glow just reaching. Shadows shifted as he braced himself, stretching one hand against the cold stone, the other hooking the edge of the box. It wouldn't budge. He gritted his teeth, pulling harder until his shoulders burned. At last, it tore free, clanging against a rock as he clutched it to his chest. The weight nearly pulled him from the rope. His boots scrambled against the slick wall, knees striking stone, breath ripping through his throat. Inch by inch, he hauled himself up, the box dragging at him like an anchor. When he spilled on the ground above, dust choking his lungs, he lay on his back staring at the stars. The desert night pressed silent around him. Only the box gleamed under the lantern's sway. He knelt, prying at the rusted lock with his knife. Metal screeched. The lid cracked open. Inside lay stacks of coins, dull gold catching the lamplight, spilling shadows across his hands. Beneath them, pistols wrapped in oilskin, their steel untouched by time. And under all that, a ledger bound in cracked leather, its pages filled with names and numbers scrawled in a hard, merciless hand. Elias turned one page, then another. Debts, confessions, men marked down like cattle. A chill spread through him as he read the first initials that matched the revolver in his belt. J.M. Judge Mercer. The ranch wasn't abandoned by chance. It had been Mercer's hiding place, a vault for blood gold stolen during the war. This land hadn't been cursed. It had been silenced. A horse whinnied on the ridge. Elias's head snapped up, every muscle tight. He doused the lantern and crouched in the shadows. Moonlight carved the land silver, and on the slope above, 3 riders sat watching, unmoving silhouettes. The same men from before, their eyes fixed on him. They knew. He shoved the lid closed, dragging the box back toward the well. His hands trembled, but his mind was clear. This wasn't treasure. It was a fuse. Gold like this could burn man's life to ash if left in his keeping. The riders turned their mounts and disappeared into the canyon's mouth. But Elias felt the promise of their return heavy on his chest. He touched the revolver at his side, the initials cutting against his palm like fire. The night deepened, quiet as a held breath. The box sat beside him, waiting. Elias stared at the well's dark mouth and knew the land itself was holding its tongue, biding its time for a reckoning. Hooves thundered against the hardpan as riders fanned out across the ridge. Dust boiled behind them, the night splitting with the rattle of spurs and the clink of rifles. Elias stood in the yard, the well at his back, the chest beside him. His hand rested steady on the revolver, moonlight glinting off the worn initials carved into its handle. Judge Mercer rode at the center, broad-brimmed hat low, his coat dark against the silver desert. His men reined in, circling like wolves, rifles raised. "You been digging where you don't belong." Mercer's voice carried rough as gravel. Elias didn't answer. He shifted his weight, the dust whispering beneath his boots. The well breathed behind him, black and silent, waiting. Mercer nodded once, and 2 riders spurred forward. Elias drew. The revolver cracked like a church bell, flame bursting in the dark. One man pitched backward out of his saddle. Another crumpled before his horse stopped moving. The rest froze, stunned by the speed of it. "Soldier," Mercer muttered, eyes narrowing. "I remember your kind." The ring of rifles lifted again. Bullets ripped through the night, boards splintering off the ranch house, dust spitting at Elias's feet. He dropped behind the trough, returning fire in measured, patient strikes. Each shot carried the cold precision of war long buried, each echo rolling across the desert like thunder. Men toppled, groaning into the dirt, horses screaming as they scattered. Smoke hung thick, the acrid taste filling his mouth. The chest sat open, coins spilling into the dust, gleaming in stray flashes of muzzle fire. Mercer's eyes fixed on it, hunger burning bright. "You don't know what that gold means," Mercer snarled, dismounting, revolver in hand. Elias rose from cover, dust caked across his face, eyes steady. "I know enough." They faced each other across the well, the desert silent but for the groans of dying men. Mercer lifted his gun. Elias fired first. The bullet struck hard, driving Mercer to his knees. His revolver clattered, skidding across the dirt. Mercer's hand reached to the chest, fingers clawing at the coins even as blood spread dark beneath him. Elias stepped forward, seized the lid, and heaved. Gold spilled in a shining arc before plunging back into black throat of the well. One coin after another rang against stone until silence swallowed the last of it. Mercer collapsed, eyes wide, the echo of his fortune lost forever. Elias stood tall, revolver at his side, the desert wind cooling the sweat on his skin. The night was quiet now, the land still as judgment passed. They say he never touched that gold again. He kept only the ranch, mended its fences, and lived plain, rich only in the piece he carved from cursed ground. And the well? Folks whisper it still holds the sound of coins striking stone, a warning to any who'd chase riches born of blood.